The sleek black car pulled up to the entrance of the Grand Palace Hotel, just as the evening sun cast long shadows across its impressive facade. Anthony Richardson straightened his tie and took a deep breath before stepping out. He had been traveling for 14 hours straight, flying from Tokyo to New York after closing a major tech deal that would change the industry landscape. All he wanted now was a hot shower and a comfortable bed. "I can take your bags to your room, sir," said the uniformed doorman with a friendly smile, rushing forward to help. "Thank you," Anthony replied, handing over his luggage. His normally crisp suit was slightly wrinkled from the long flight, but he still carried himself with quiet confidence. Despite being worth billions, he preferred traveling without an entourage when scouting new business opportunities. It kept things real, he believed, and helped him see how companies truly operated when they didn't know who he was. The Grand Palace Hotel stood as one of the most prestigious addresses in the city. Its marble columns and crystal chandeliers had welcomed presidents, movie stars, and royalty for over a century. Anthony had specifically chosen it for its reputation and had booked the reservation himself rather than having his assistant handle it, as he sometimes did when he wanted to maintain a low profile. The gleaming lobby bustled with activity, business people checking emails on plush sofas, tourists marveling at the ornate ceiling, and hotel staff moving efficiently to meet every need. Anthony approached the front desk where a man in his 50s with graying hair and a stiff posture stood organizing papers. "Good evening," Anthony said with a tired smile. "I have a reservation under Richardson." The desk manager, whose name tag read Gregory Phillips, looked up briefly. His pleasant expression faltered for a split second as his eyes took in Anthony's appearance. Something almost imperceptible shifted in his demeanor. "Richardson, you said?" Phillips repeated, his fingers hovering over the computer keyboard without actually typing anything. "Yes, Anthony Richardson. I booked a suite for 5 nights starting today." Phillips made a show of checking the computer, frowning and clicking through several screens while occasionally glancing up at Anthony with barely disguised disdain. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Richardson, but I'm not seeing your reservation in our system," Phillips finally said, his tone suggesting he was anything but sorry. Anthony furrowed his brow. "That's strange. I received a confirmation email. Let me pull it up for you." He reached for his phone and quickly found the message, turning the screen toward Phillips. "Here it is, confirmation number HDG7402 for a Lakeview executive suite." Phillips barely glanced at the phone. Perhaps there was a computer error. "Regardless, I'm afraid we're fully booked tonight. There's nothing available." As if on cue, a well-dressed white couple approached the desk next to him. The woman spoke softly to another clerk. "Hi. We don't have a reservation, but we were wondering if you might have a room available for tonight." "Let me check for you right away, ma'am," the other clerk responded cheerfully. After a few keystrokes, she smiled brightly. "You're in luck. We have a lovely deluxe room with a king bed available. Would you like me to book that for you?" Anthony watched this exchange, then turned back to Phillips, whose expression remained impassive. "It seems you do have rooms available," Anthony said calmly, keeping his voice level despite his growing frustration. "Those are different categories of rooms," Phillips replied dismissively. "As I said, nothing that would suit your requirements." A young woman who had been observing from a nearby desk approached. Her name tag identified her as Diane Chen, assistant manager. "Is there a problem here, Mr. Phillips?" she asked, looking between the two men with concern. Before Phillips could answer, Anthony spoke. "I made a reservation that seems to have been lost. And despite having my confirmation number, I'm being told there are no rooms available, while I just witnessed walk-in guests being accommodated." Chen's eyes widened slightly. She glanced at Phillips, who straightened his tie nervously. "Mr. Richardson doesn't have a proper reservation," Phillips insisted. "And frankly, the Grand Palace has certain standards. Our clientele expects a particular atmosphere, and we reserve the right to determine who best fits with our establishment." The implication hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Diane looked uncomfortable but didn't challenge her superior. "Perhaps I could help you find alternative accommodations elsewhere. There are several other hotels within a few blocks." Anthony stood perfectly still, the weight of what was happening settling on his shoulders. It wasn't the first time he'd faced discrimination, but it still stung every time. Before his success in the tech world, he'd experienced plenty of doors being closed in his face. He'd hoped those days were behind him, but here he was, worth billions, and still being judged by the color of his skin rather than the content of his character. "I understand," Anthony said quietly, his voice controlled despite the anger and hurt churning inside him. "To be clear, you're refusing me service despite my valid reservation? We're simply informing you that we cannot accommodate you at this time," Phillips replied, his tone growing colder. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other guests to attend to." He turned away deliberately. A security guard had materialized nearby, watching Anthony with an expectant look, as if assuming trouble would follow. Other guests were beginning to stare. Anthony's phone buzzed with a text from his executive assistant, Linda Wong. "How's the hotel? Need anything before your meeting tomorrow?" He looked at the message, then back at the impassive face of Phillips, who was now helping another guest with exaggerated courtesy. Making a quick decision, Anthony typed back, "Need you to gather some information. Call me in 5 minutes. Is there anything else we can help you with, sir?" Diane asked, her discomfort evident but her loyalty to her job winning out. "No, thank you. I think the situation is perfectly clear," Anthony replied, maintaining his dignity as he turned to leave. As he walked toward the exit, Anthony noticed how the security guard followed at a discreet distance as if to ensure he actually left the premises. The doorman, who had been so helpful earlier, now avoided eye contact, having clearly overheard what had transpired. Outside, Anthony instructed his driver to wait while he made a phone call. When Linda called, he explained what had happened. "That's outrageous," Linda exclaimed, her voice tight with anger. "We should expose them immediately. I can have PR draft a statement and—" "No," Anthony interrupted, his mind already working on a different approach. "I want you to get me everything you can on the ownership structure of the Grand Palace Hotel. Financial statements, recent transactions, board members, everything." "You're thinking of buying it?" Linda asked, quickly catching on. "I'm thinking it might be time for new management," Anthony replied, watching as more guests entered the hotel that had just rejected him. "Also, check if there have been other complaints about discrimination at this hotel or others in their group. Contact our legal team and have them standing by. On it. Where should I book you for tonight instead?" Anthony thought for a moment. "The West Side Hotel, it's not far from here." "And Linda? Make the reservation under your name. I'll check in with my ID, but I want to keep a low profile for now. Consider it done." "I'm sorry this happened, Anthony." "Don't be sorry," he said, a new determination in his voice. "Just help me make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." As his car pulled away from the Grand Palace Hotel, Anthony didn't look back at its gleaming facade. Instead, he was already focusing on tomorrow, when he would return not as a guest seeking a room, but as something else entirely. The hotel staff had no idea who they had just turned away, but they would soon find out. What they saw as just another face, just another person they could discriminate against without consequences, was actually someone with the power and resources to change their world overnight. And by this time tomorrow, that's exactly what Anthony Richardson intended to do. The West Side Hotel wasn't nearly as grand as the Palace, but Anthony appreciated the warm welcome he received. No raised eyebrows, no suspicious glances, just professional service and a comfortable room where he could finally rest after his long journey. But sleep didn't come easily. As he lay in bed, the interaction at the Grand Palace Hotel kept replaying in his mind. The slight change in Philip's expression when he first looked up. The sudden computer error with his reservation. The security guard hovering nearby, as if Anthony might cause trouble simply because of who he was. After tossing and turning for an hour, Anthony got up and opened his laptop. If he couldn't sleep, he might as well work. He sent a message to Linda. "Still awake? What have you found?" Her response came almost immediately. "Thought you might be up. Getting on a video call would be better. Got lots to share." When Linda's face appeared on screen, Anthony could tell she had been working nonstop. Her usually neat hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and empty coffee cups were visible in the background of her home office. "You look like you've been busy," Anthony said. "You have no idea," Linda replied, shuffling through papers off-screen. "First, the Grand Palace Hotel is part of Lux Heritage Holdings, a company that owns 15 luxury hotels across the country. The CEO is William Hargrove, old money, third generation in the hotel business." "What's their financial situation?" Anthony asked, reaching for a notebook. Linda's expression shifted to a small, satisfied smile. That's where it gets interesting. They're in trouble, big trouble. They've been hiding it well, but I called in some favors with financial analysts I know. Lux Heritage took on massive debt for renovations right before the travel industry downturn. Their occupancy rates are down 30% from last year, and they've been trying to find investors quietly. So they need cash, Anthony said thoughtfully. Any records of discrimination complaints? Linda nodded grimly. I found 7 formal complaints filed against the Grand Palace in the last 3 years, all settled privately with non-disclosure agreements. And get this, 2 former employees were willing to talk anonymously. They claim there's an unwritten policy coming from upper management about maintaining the hotel's traditional image. Apparently, Phillips was just following orders from above. Anthony's jaw tightened. So it's systematic, not just one prejudiced manager. Exactly. The whole corporate culture is built on exclusion disguised as exclusivity, Linda said, making air quotes. But here's something else you should know. The Grand Palace is their flagship property, the crown jewel. If you were looking to make a statement, that's the one to go after. Anthony leaned back in his chair, processing the information. What about their board? Who makes the decisions? 5 board members, all cut from the same cloth as Hargrove. Old money, old thinking. But Linda paused dramatically. They answer to shareholders, and the company's stock has dropped 40% in the last year. There's a shareholders' meeting next month where Hargrove will face tough questions. He's desperate for good news before then. Anthony nodded slowly, a plan forming in his mind. So they need a white knight investor. Or they might have to sell assets to cover their debts, Linda confirmed. Their most valuable asset being the Grand Palace, Anthony finished. Perfect. He walked to the window of his hotel room, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there was the Grand Palace, a beautiful building with an ugly culture hidden behind its marble columns. Linda, I want you to create a shell company, something that can't be traced back to me or Richardson Technologies. Then reach out to Lux Heritage through that company. Express interest in either a major investment or outright purchase of the Grand Palace specifically. I'm on it, Linda said, already typing. I'll use Wilson & Associates, that law firm we've worked with on confidential acquisitions before. They know how to keep things quiet. Good, Anthony said. And contact our PR team. Tell them to be ready, but don't share details yet. I don't want any leaks. What about legal? Should we have them look into those discrimination cases? Anthony thought for a moment. Yes, but discreetly. Don't alert Lux Heritage that we're investigating their history. We want them eager to make a deal, not defensive. After ending the call with Linda, Anthony finally managed a few hours of sleep. He woke to dozens of messages and updates from his team, who had been working through the night on his behalf. By noon, Anthony was sitting in a temporary office space Linda had arranged, reviewing the preliminary offer his team had prepared. The shell company, Beacon Hospitality Group, was offering to purchase the Grand Palace Hotel for 80% of its pre-pandemic valuation. A generous offer given its current financial struggles, but still a bargain for Anthony. Mr. Hargrove's assistant just confirmed he can meet tomorrow morning, Linda said, entering the office with fresh coffee. He's cutting short a golf trip in Florida to fly back tonight. Your offer definitely got his attention. Good, Anthony said, taking the coffee gratefully. And the paperwork? Our lawyers have drafted everything. If Hargrove agrees to the terms, we can close immediately. The money is ready to transfer. What about Phillips, the manager who turned me away? Linda handed him a tablet. Here's his personnel file. He's been with the Grand Palace for 22 years, worked his way up from bellhop to front desk to manager. He's considered part of the old guard, very loyal to the Hargrove family. Anthony studied the man's photo. There was nothing particularly remarkable about him, just an ordinary person who had made the choice to treat others as less than equal. And what about the assistant manager? The young woman who was there? Diane Chen, Linda confirmed. Been there 3 years. Multiple positive customer reviews mention her by name. She's well liked by the staff too. Anthony nodded, making mental notes. I want background checks on all the senior staff. We need to know who we're dealing with. The rest of the day was a flurry of preparation. Anthony's team worked from the temporary office while he visited several of his company's local projects, maintaining the appearance of his original business trip schedule. No one would suspect that he was orchestrating a hotel purchase on the side. That evening, as Anthony sat having dinner with Linda and two of his most trusted advisors, his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Richardson? This is William Hargrove of Lux Heritage Holdings." The voice was smooth, cultured, and slightly anxious. "I understand your company is interested in the Grand Palace." "Yes, we are," Anthony replied calmly, signaling to his dinner companions to stay quiet. "I'm very interested in discussing this further. However, I was wondering if we might meet in person, rather than with all our lawyers present initially, perhaps breakfast at the Grand Palace tomorrow. Their chef makes an excellent Eggs Benedict." Anthony almost laughed at the irony. "The Grand Palace? I've heard it's quite exclusive." "Oh, it is, but as my personal guest, you'll receive our finest treatment," Hargrove assured him, completely unaware that he was speaking to someone his own hotel had turned away just hours ago. "That sounds perfect," Anthony said. "Shall we say 8 a.m. in the hotel restaurant?" "Excellent. I look forward to meeting you, Mr. Richardson." After hanging up, Anthony shared the conversation with his team, and they all exchanged knowing looks. "He has no idea," Linda said, shaking her head in disbelief. "No, he doesn't," Anthony agreed. "And tomorrow morning I'm going to walk into that hotel not as a guest seeking a room, but as its potential owner." Anthony's advisor leaned forward. "What exactly are you planning to do once you own it?" Anthony took a sip of water, his expression resolute. "First, I'm going to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else there. Then I'm going to turn it into a model of what a truly welcoming luxury hotel should be." He paused. "But before all that, I'm going to enjoy the look on Phillips's face when he realizes who I am." As they continued their dinner, Anthony felt a sense of anticipation building. Tomorrow would bring justice not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been judged unfairly or made to feel unwelcome because of how they looked. The Grand Palace was about to get a lesson in true hospitality. Anthony woke up before his alarm the next morning, a mixture of determination and anticipation coursing through him. He selected his finest suit, a perfectly tailored charcoal gray ensemble that had cost more than some cars. Today's meeting wasn't just business. It was personal. "How do you want to play this?" Linda asked as their car approached the Grand Palace Hotel. She had insisted on coming along, both for moral support and to witness what she called karma in action. "Professionally," Anthony replied, straightening his tie. "We're here to make a business deal first. The rest will follow." The same doorman who had been so helpful before Anthony's rejection was on duty again. His eyes widened slightly in recognition as Anthony stepped out of the car, but he quickly composed himself. "Welcome to the Grand Palace Hotel, sir," he said, a hint of confusion in his voice. "Thank you," Anthony replied warmly. "I'm here for a breakfast meeting with Mr. Hargrove." "Of course, sir. Mr. Hargrove mentioned he was expecting an important guest." "Please, right this way." As they walked through the grand lobby, Anthony felt several pairs of eyes on him. The front desk was bustling with morning checkouts, and there, just as Anthony had expected, stood Gregory Phillips, looking just as stiff and unwelcoming as the day before. Phillips glanced up, did a double-take, and froze when he saw Anthony walking confidently through the lobby he'd been escorted out of just yesterday. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Anthony didn't acknowledge him, instead following the doorman toward the hotel's exclusive restaurant. The maitre d' greeted them with a bow. "Mr. Richardson and guest for Mr. Hargrove, please," Anthony said. "Yes, Mr. Hargrove is already seated. Please follow me." They were led to a corner table where a tall, distinguished-looking man in his 60s stood up to greet them. William Hargrove had silver hair, a deep tan, and the easy confidence of someone born into privilege. "Mr. Richardson, I presume," Hargrove said, extending his hand. "A pleasure to meet you in person." "Likewise," Anthony replied, his grip firm. "This is Linda Wong, my chief of operations." Hargrove shook Linda's hand with a slightly less enthusiastic grip before gesturing for them to sit. "I hope you don't mind, but I've taken the liberty of ordering coffee for the table. The Grand Palace prides itself on serving the finest Ethiopian blend." "Sounds perfect," Anthony said, settling into his chair and taking in the opulent surroundings. The restaurant was beautiful, with crystal chandeliers, fine china, and impeccable service. It was exactly the kind of place Anthony should have been welcome to stay in. Hargrove wasted no time getting down to business. "I must say your offer came at a rather opportune moment. While the Grand Palace is certainly not officially on the market, Lux Heritage is always open to strategic partnerships. I find that timing is everything in business, Anthony replied smoothly. Beacon Hospitality has been looking to acquire a signature property in the city, and the Grand Palace has exactly the kind of history we're interested in. Hargrove beamed, completely missing Anthony's subtle emphasis. Yes, over 100 years of tradition. This building has hosted royalty, presidents, celebrities, the most exclusive clientele imaginable. Their conversation was interrupted as a waiter arrived to take their breakfast orders. As the waiter turned to leave, Anthony noticed Gregory Phillips hovering near the restaurant entrance, whispering urgently to another staff member while shooting glances in their direction. "Is everything all right?" Hargrove asked, following Anthony's gaze. "Perfectly fine," Anthony replied. "I was just admiring the architectural details. This building truly is remarkable." "It is indeed. Designed by Hammond and Wells in 1905. The woodwork alone took 3 years to complete," Hargrove said proudly. "Now about your offer. While the number is certainly interesting, I'm curious about your plans for the property. The Grand Palace has a certain character we've worked hard to maintain." Anthony took a sip of his coffee before responding. "Character is exactly what drew us to the Grand Palace. However, we believe there's untapped potential here. The hotel industry is changing. Exclusivity in the wrong sense can become exclusion, which is bad for business in today's world." Hargrove's smile tightened slightly. "Our clientele expects a certain atmosphere. And they'll still get it," Anthony assured him. "But expanding your welcome can expand your profits. Our projections suggest a 40% increase in revenue within 18 months with the right adjustments." Linda opened her tablet and slid it across to Hargrove, displaying a chart of projected earnings. His eyebrows rose as he studied the numbers. "These are impressive projections," he admitted. "They're conservative, actually," Linda said. "We've achieved better results with similar properties." As they discussed financial details, Anthony noticed Diane Chen, the assistant manager from yesterday, entering the restaurant. She spotted him immediately and her face registered shock. She quickly turned and hurried out, presumably to report his presence. The breakfast arrived and Hargrove continued extolling the virtues of the Grand Palace while they ate. Anthony listened politely, occasionally asking questions that revealed his deep knowledge of the hospitality industry. With each answer, Hargrove seemed increasingly impressed by the mysterious potential buyer. "I must say, Mr. Richardson, you've clearly done your homework," Hargrove said as he finished his Eggs Benedict. "Most potential investors don't understand the nuances of luxury hospitality." "I believe in knowing exactly what I'm buying," Anthony replied meaningfully. "Speaking of which," Linda interjected, "our offer includes a clause for immediate transfer of operational control upon signing. Is that something Lux Heritage would be comfortable with?" Hargrove hesitated. "That's rather unusual. Typically, there's a transition period. Our financing is contingent on immediate control," Anthony explained. "We find it reduces complications. Of course, we'd be happy to retain staff who meet our standards." Before Hargrove could respond, the restaurant manager approached their table, looking uncomfortable. "Excuse me, Mr. Hargrove. Mr. Phillips has requested to speak with you urgently. He says it's a matter of significant importance." Hargrove frowned at the interruption. "Can't it wait? I'm in the middle of an important meeting." "He was quite insistent, sir." Hargrove sighed and turned to Anthony. "Would you excuse me for just a moment?" "Hotel business, I'm afraid." "Of course," Anthony said calmly. "Take your time." As Hargrove stepped away from the table, Linda leaned in. $10 says Phillips is telling him who you really are right now." "No bet," Anthony replied with a small smile. "The question is what Hargrove will do with that information." They didn't have to wait long to find out. Within minutes, Hargrove returned to the table, his complexion notably paler than before. He sat down slowly, his previous confidence evaporating. "Mr. Richardson," he began, his voice strained. "It seems there may have been an unfortunate incident yesterday. My front desk manager informs me that you attempted to check in and encountered some difficulties." Anthony met his gaze steadily. "That's one way to put it. I want to assure you that if there was any misunderstanding, it certainly doesn't reflect the values of Lux Heritage Holdings. Perhaps there was genuinely a computer error with your reservation." "Mr. Hargrove," Anthony interrupted gently. "We both know what happened wasn't a computer error. Your manager refused me service because of what I look like. Not because of any mistake in your system. Hargrove's face flushed. I'm sure that's not. I watched as other guests without reservations were welcomed while I was turned away despite having confirmation. I was followed by security as if I were a threat. And I have a strong suspicion this isn't the first time something like this has happened at the Grand Palace. A heavy silence fell over the table. Hargrove looked trapped between denial and damage control. What exactly are you looking for here, Mr. Richardson? He finally asked. Is this meeting really about buying the hotel, or is it about something else? Anthony leaned forward slightly. It's about both. My offer to purchase the Grand Palace is genuine. The price is fair given your current financial situation. But yes, yesterday's incident confirmed something I had already suspected about how this hotel is run. And that's precisely why I want to buy it. To what end? Hargrove asked, his voice barely above a whisper. To transform it, Anthony replied simply. To make it truly grand, a place that honors its history while embracing a future where everyone who can afford your room rates is treated with equal dignity and respect. Hargrove stared at him for a long moment, calculation evident in his eyes. And if I refuse to sell? Linda slid another document across the table. This is a press release our team has prepared, detailing yesterday's incident along with similar complaints we've uncovered from other guests over the past 3 years. We've also noted Lux Heritage's current financial struggles and declining occupancy rates. This would be devastating, Hargrove said quietly, scanning the document. It would, Anthony agreed, but it doesn't have to happen. My offer stands. Fair market value for a hotel with enormous potential. The choice is yours, Mr. Hargrove. The older man looked between Anthony and Linda, then down at the purchase offer still sitting on the table. With a resigned sigh, he reached for his pen. I believe we have a deal to finalize, Mr. Richardson. The next 24 hours passed in a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and legal meetings. Anthony barely slept, running on adrenaline and purpose. By the following morning, every I was dotted and every T crossed. The Grand Palace Hotel officially belonged to Anthony Richardson. Congratulations, Linda said, handing him the final signed documents in a leather portfolio. You now own one of the most prestigious properties in the city. Anthony took the portfolio, feeling its weight, both physical and symbolic. And now the real work begins. They were sitting in what was now Anthony's office at the hotel, a wood-paneled room that had previously belonged to the general manager. Outside the door, the hotel continued to operate as usual. The staff had been told only that ownership had changed hands, but most details were being kept quiet until Anthony was ready to make his official announcement. The executive team is assembled in the main conference room, Linda informed him, checking her watch. Including Mr. Phillips, Anthony nodded. And our new people? Waiting in the adjoining room as requested. The HR consultant is with them, ready to step in once you've made the initial announcements. Anthony stood up, straightening his tie. Let's not keep them waiting. The main conference room fell silent as Anthony and Linda entered. Around the large mahogany table sat 12 people, the hotel's department heads and senior managers. Gregory Phillips was among them, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Most of the others appeared merely curious or anxious, as was natural when new ownership took over. Good morning, Anthony began, his voice calm and authoritative. For those who don't know me, my name is Anthony Richardson. As of 9 o'clock this morning, I am the new owner of the Grand Palace Hotel. He paused, letting the information sink in. A few people exchanged glances. Some of you may recognize me, Anthony continued. 2 days ago, I attempted to check into this hotel as a guest. Despite having a confirmed reservation, I was turned away. His eyes found Phillips, who stared down at the table. The reason wasn't stated explicitly, but it was clear to everyone present. I didn't look like what someone at the Grand Palace thought a guest should look like. Murmurs circulated around the table. A few managers looked shocked while others seemed unsurprised. What you don't know is that I'm also the founder and CEO of Richardson Technologies. My company is valued at over $30 billion. I was in town to finalize the acquisition of Nexus Systems, a deal worth $400 million that was announced this morning. Now the room was completely silent, every eye fixed on Anthony. I'm telling you this not to impress you, but to make a point. Judging people by their appearance isn't just wrong. It's bad business. The Grand Palace lost revenue when it turned me away, but more importantly, it lost something that can't be measured in dollars. Its integrity. Anthony placed both hands on the table, leaning forward slightly. I didn't buy this hotel for revenge. I bought it because I saw potential, not just for profit but for transformation. The Grand Palace has a storied history, but its future can be even greater if it becomes truly welcoming to all who can afford its luxury. He straightened up and began to walk slowly around the table. Starting today, things will be different. I've spent the night reviewing personnel files, guest complaints, and internal policies. What I found was troubling but not surprising. There's been a culture here that allowed discrimination to flourish under the guise of exclusivity. Anthony stopped behind Philip's chair. Mr. Phillips. The manager tensed visibly but turned to face Anthony. Yes, sir? You've been with the Grand Palace for 22 years. Phillips nodded stiffly. Yes, sir. I've dedicated my career to this establishment, and in that time your name has appeared in connection with 6 formal complaints of discriminatory treatment. That's only the documented cases. Phillips's face reddened. Those were misunderstandings. No, Anthony interrupted firmly but not unkindly. They weren't. They were part of a pattern that was encouraged by previous ownership. I don't believe you're solely responsible for the culture here, but you've been a willing participant in it. He addressed the entire room again. I believe in second chances, but I also believe in accountability. So here's what's going to happen. Every staff member will undergo comprehensive anti-bias training. New guidelines for guest relations will be implemented immediately, and there will be leadership changes. Anthony pressed a button on the conference phone. Linda, please ask our new team to join us. The door opened and 5 people entered the room. They were a diverse group of hospitality professionals Anthony's team had recruited overnight. These are your new department heads for front office. Security, food and beverage, sales, and human resources, Anthony announced. They all bring impressive credentials from top hotels around the world, and they share my vision for what the Grand Palace can become. He turned back to Phillips. Mr. Phillips, you have 2 options. Option 1, you can resign today with a standard severance package. Option 2, you can remain with the hotel in a different capacity, working under our new front office manager, and demonstrating that you're willing to be part of the change we're creating. If you choose to stay, you'll be evaluated after 90 days like everyone else. Phillips looked stunned. Clearly, he had expected immediate termination. I'd like to stay, he said finally, his voice barely audible. Anthony nodded. That's your choice to make. But understand this, the old way of doing business is over. Every guest who can afford our rates will receive the same exceptional service, regardless of what they look like or where they come from. For the next hour, Anthony outlined his plans for the hotel. Beyond the personnel changes, he described physical renovations, community outreach programs, and a new marketing strategy that would position the Grand Palace as the most welcoming luxury hotel in the city. Throughout his presentation, he invited questions and feedback, making it clear that while some changes were non-negotiable, he valued the institutional knowledge in the room. By the end, the atmosphere had shifted. Most of the managers seemed cautiously optimistic, even excited about the new direction. A few, including Phillips, remained reserved, but Anthony hadn't expected to win everyone over immediately. That's all for now, he concluded. You'll each meet with your new department head this afternoon to discuss specific changes. Thank you for your attention. As the room cleared out, Diane Chen, the assistant manager who had been present during Anthony's rejection, lingered behind. Mr. Richardson, she said hesitantly, may I speak with you for a moment? Of course, Anthony replied, gesturing for her to sit. I wanted to apologize for what happened when you tried to check in, she said, her voice steady despite her obvious discomfort. I knew what Mr. Phillips was doing was wrong, but I didn't speak up. I was afraid of losing my job. Anthony studied her for a moment. Fear is a powerful motivator, Ms. Chen, but so is courage. I understand if you want me to leave as well. Actually, Anthony interrupted, I was impressed by your file. Guests consistently praise your service, and you've implemented several small improvements to front desk procedures that increased efficiency. What you lacked wasn't competence, but confidence to stand up against an established culture. He leaned forward. I'm offering you a promotion to assistant front office manager, working directly with our new manager. It comes with more responsibility and higher expectations, but also better pay, and the chance to help shape the hotel's new direction. Are you interested? Diane's eyes widened in surprise. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. Don't thank me yet, Anthony said with a small smile. The coming months won't be easy. Change never is, especially when it runs this deep. But if you're committed to creating a truly welcoming environment for all our guests, I think you'll find the work rewarding. After Diane left, Linda returned to the office with a stack of media requests. News of the ownership change had leaked and journalists were clamoring for interviews. They all want to know why a tech billionaire suddenly bought a hotel, she said, dropping the messages on the desk. What should I tell them? Anthony looked out the window at the bustling street below. Guests were arriving at the Grand Palace unaware of the transformation beginning inside its walls. Tell them I'll be holding a press conference tomorrow morning, he decided. It's time to share our vision with the world. Linda nodded approvingly. And what exactly is that vision in one sentence? Anthony thought for a moment, then smiled. True luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about making everyone feel like they belong. The Grand Palace's ballroom had never been so packed with media. Television cameras lined the back wall, reporters filled every seat, and photographers jostled for position near the small stage that had been set up for the press conference. The story had exploded overnight. A tech billionaire buys the hotel that discriminated against him, and everyone wanted the details. Anthony stood just outside the ballroom doors, reviewing his notes one last time. Linda was beside him along with Michael Torres, the PR specialist they'd brought in to help manage the media frenzy. Remember, keep it positive, Michael advised. This isn't about shaming the hotel's past. It's about celebrating its future. Anthony nodded. I know, but I won't sugarcoat what happened either. People need to understand why these changes matter. 5 minutes, Mr. Richardson, a staff member announced, holding the door slightly ajar. Through the gap, Anthony could see the crowd growing restless with anticipation. Ready? Linda asked. Anthony tucked his notes into his pocket. Let's do this. The room fell silent as Anthony walked onto the stage. Camera flashes erupted like lightning, and he waited for them to subside before approaching the microphone. Good morning, he began. Thank you all for coming. 3 days ago, I arrived at the Grand Palace Hotel as a traveler looking for a place to stay. Today I stand before you as its new owner. That's quite a change, and I imagine you're all wondering why. He paused, looking out at the sea of expectant faces. The simple version is this. I was denied a room at this hotel because of the color of my skin. The more complex truth is that my experience was just one example of a systemic problem, not just at the Grand Palace, but across many institutions where exclusivity has become a cover for exclusion. Anthony took a sip of water, then continued. I didn't buy this hotel for revenge. I bought it because sometimes the only way to change a system is from within. The Grand Palace has a rich history and incredible potential. Under new management, it will become a model for how luxury and inclusivity can go hand in hand. For the next 15 minutes, Anthony outlined his vision for the hotel's transformation. He announced a complete renovation that would honor the building's historic character while modernizing its facilities. He described new training programs for staff and partnerships with hospitality schools to create internship opportunities for students from underrepresented communities. He revealed plans for community events that would make the Grand Palace a cultural center for the entire city, not just its wealthiest residents. In 6 months, he promised, the Grand Palace will reopen with a new name, the Welcome House. It will maintain its 5-star standards while setting a new standard for what hospitality truly means. The announcement of the name change caused a stir among the reporters. Hands shot up around the room and Anthony began taking questions. Mr. Richardson, a television reporter called out. Some would say buying an entire hotel is an extreme response to one incident of discrimination. What would you say to that? Anthony considered his answer carefully. I'd say it wasn't one incident. In preparing for this purchase, my team uncovered dozens of similar complaints that had been quietly settled over the years. What happened to me was part of a pattern. And yes, buying the hotel is a significant step, but meaningful change often requires bold action. Another reporter stood up. You mentioned keeping the current staff. Won't that make it difficult to change the culture? Change is never easy, Anthony acknowledged. But I believe most people want to do the right thing if given proper guidance and motivation. Some staff members have already left, and that's their choice. Those who stay will be part of something important, a transformation that will make them proud of where they work. The questions continued. ranging from business specifics to Anthony's personal feelings about what had happened. He answered each one thoughtfully, neither downplaying the discrimination he'd faced nor presenting himself as a crusading hero. He was just a businessman who saw both a problem and an opportunity to solve it. As the press conference wound down, a young reporter in the back raised her hand. "Mr. Richardson, what would you say to other businesses that might be practicing similar discrimination?" Anthony leaned into the microphone. "I'd say change is coming, with or without you. Customers today have choices and information that previous generations didn't. Social media can expose a single incident to millions overnight. But beyond the practical risks, there's a simple truth. Treating people with dignity isn't just morally right, it's good business. Diversity drives innovation. Inclusivity expands your market, and respect builds loyalty. The businesses that understand this will thrive. Those that don't will be left behind." With that final answer, Anthony thanked the reporters and left the stage. The room erupted with more questions and camera flashes. But Michael stepped to the microphone to announce the end of the press conference. In the hallway outside, Linda was already fielding calls on her phone. "The story's everywhere," she reported. "Social media is blowing up, and we've already received partnership offers from 3 major hospitality brands who want to be associated with the rebrand." Anthony nodded, but his attention was caught by a figure standing quietly near the service entrance, Gregory Phillips. The former manager looked different somehow, smaller, less sure of himself, but also less rigid. "Mr. Phillips," Anthony acknowledged, approaching him. "I didn't expect to see you here today." Phillips straightened his tie nervously. "I watched your press conference from the back. I wanted to hear what you had to say." "And what did you think?" "I think you're right," Phillips admitted, the words seemingly difficult for him. "About everything. The culture here, the discrimination, all of it." He took a deep breath. "I've been part of the problem for a long time." "Too long." Anthony studied the man's face, seeing genuine discomfort there. "Recognition is the first step toward change, Mr. Phillips. That's why I wanted to talk to you," Phillips continued. "I've been thinking about your offer to stay on in a different position. I appreciate it, but I don't think it's the right move for me or for the hotel." "You're resigning?" Phillips nodded. "Yes, but before I go, I want to do something useful. I've worked here for 22 years. I know every policy, every unwritten rule that enabled discrimination. If you're serious about changing things, that information could help." Anthony hadn't expected this. "You're offering to document the discriminatory practices you participated in?" "Yes," Phillips said simply. "It won't make up for what I've done, but it might prevent others from making the same mistakes." After a moment's consideration, Anthony extended his hand. "I accept your resignation, Mr. Phillips, and your offer of help. We'll have our HR team contact you to arrange meetings." As Phillips walked away, Linda rejoined Anthony. "That was unexpected," she remarked, having overheard the conversation. "People can surprise you," Anthony said. "Sometimes in bad ways, sometimes in good ones." Over the next 6 months, Anthony split his time between his technology company and the hotel renovation. The physical changes were extensive but preserved the building's historic character. More important were the cultural changes, new hiring practices, comprehensive training programs, and clear accountability measures. Not everything went smoothly. Some longtime guests canceled their memberships when they heard about the new direction. A few staff members resisted the changes, openly or subtly. There were setbacks and mistakes. But with each passing week, Anthony could see progress, not just in metrics and policies, but in the very atmosphere of the hotel. On the day of the grand reopening, a line of guests stretched down the block, eager to experience the Welcome House. The event had generated enormous publicity, with travel magazines and social media influencers spreading the word about the hotel's transformation. Anthony stood in the newly redesigned lobby, watching as Diane Chen, now the full front office manager, greeted the first guests with genuine warmth. The staff moved with purpose and pride, and the space itself seemed to glow with new energy. Linda appeared at his side, clipboard in hand as always. "Everything's running smoothly. All rooms booked for the next 3 months. The restaurant has a waiting list until summer. And our community programs? The first hospitality scholarship recipients have been selected. They start their internships next week." Anthony nodded, satisfaction warming his chest. He watched as a diverse stream of guests entered the hotel, all receiving the same excellent service, all made to feel equally welcome. A year ago, he couldn't have imagined owning a hotel, let alone turning it into a symbol of change. What had begun as a painful incident of discrimination had transformed into something positive and powerful. The Welcome House wasn't just a luxury hotel. It was a statement that the old ways of exclusion were giving way to a new era of true hospitality. So, Linda asked, following his gaze around the thriving lobby. Was it worth it? Anthony smiled, thinking of all the people who would now be welcomed where once they might have been turned away. Every penny, he replied. Some investments pay dividends that can't be measured in dollars.